my name is Lizzie Phelan, the book reporter, from the show Lizzie's Book Reviews. Today, the book I'm going to be telling you about is Eleanor Roosevelt, Courageous Girl, which is an amazing story written by Anne Well. This book is about Eleanor Roosevelt's very courageous life. Anna Eleanor Roosevelt was born on October 11, 1884, to a wealthy family in New York City. Her father was the brother of Theodore Roosevelt, who would later be president. When Eleanor was young, she was a solemn girl. Her mother thought she looked old-fashioned, so she called her Granny. The first part of this book talks about important events in Eleanor's childhood. These include a family visit when she was 2 years old, where she met her distant cousin named Franklin. When she was 5 years old, her family took a trip on a ship to go see London, France, and Italy, where she learned about her worlds. They put her in an Italian convent for school for a time, but she had difficulty adjusting. She had a better school experience back in New York, where she enjoyed school. She was very smart. Things became very sad for Eleanor when she was 8 years old. Her mother became sick and died. Her brother died of the same sickness later that year. Her father died 2 years later in a hospital. Eleanor and her younger brother went to live with their grandmother, who was kind but strict. When Eleanor was about 15 years old, her grandmother sent her to a boarding school in England. Eleanor liked this very much. She learned to speak French, and she was pleased when she was asked to go on a trip to Paris with the headmistress, who she greatly admired. Eleanor gained a lot of self-confidence during these years. She liked that the teacher treated her as an adult, unlike her grandmother. Eleanor did very well at school in England. Back in New York City, Eleanor runs into Franklin again on a train. At this time, Franklin is finishing college at Harvard and is planning to go to law school. Eleanor is teaching poor children. They become good friends and start spending much time together at dances and parties. Franklin sees Eleanor every time he is home from law school. In 1905, Franklin and Eleanor get married. Franklin and Eleanor go on many travels and settle into married life. Eleanor also has 5 children. After law school, Franklin becomes interested in politics. He soon becomes a New York State senator. He later becomes Assistant Secretary of the Navy. After an unsuccessful run for vice president, Franklin became sick with polio and lost the use of his legs. During his long sickness, Eleanor cared for him constantly. Many thought this was the end of his political career, but Eleanor stepped up to help him. She became very good at making speeches and helping him when he could not travel. In 1929, Franklin became governor of New York. During those next years, Eleanor cared for her family as well as her duties as the governor's wife. At the same time, she was helping the poor and was starting a private school for girls, where she was vice principal and part-time teacher. In 1933, Franklin became president of the United States. Eleanor was right by his side. The country was in the depths of the Great Depression, which was a sad time in history where money was scarce. But things soon started to get better. The people began to understand that the president and his wife cared about them and their problems. New jobs were created, and eventually things started to turn out around. Eleanor traveled all over the country. She became the eyes and ears of the president. Eleanor did things no other first lady had ever done before. She held regular press conferences for women reporters. She wrote books and articles and spoke on the radio, and she invited poor and unrepresented people to the White House. When World War II started, Eleanor traveled overseas to visit men in the armed forces. President Franklin D. Roosevelt died in 1945, just as the war was coming to an end. It was a difficult time for Eleanor. However, she wanted to continue to help the people. She was named U.S. Representative to the United Nations, where she became chairman of the Human Rights Commission. In this role, Eleanor continued to travel the world, helping people anywhere she went. When she died in 1962, Eleanor was the world's most admired and talked about woman. This book, I thought, was an amazing story that I would recommend to you. This book tells you that Eleanor Roosevelt was definitely not like a lot of the other first ladies. Eleanor Roosevelt spoke about rights for everyone and assisted her husband with his difficult sickness. After I read this book, I was convinced that Eleanor Roosevelt was the most important first lady. I think you would really enjoy this book as much as I did. That is the end of Lizzie's book reviews. Bye, and have a nice day, everyone.